Start the broadcast in 5, 4.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Alan Schimmel, Editor-in-Chief of DevOps.com, and thanks for joining us on what promises to be a really exciting, interesting webinar today. Today's webinar is Efficient Performance Test Automation, Optimizing the Jenkins Pipeline, and it's brought to us, sponsored by BlazeMeter, or CA BlazeMeter, and in addition to which CloudBees, a presenter from CloudBees, will be joining us. Before we get to that, though, let me just take a few moments as we allow for latecomers to log in to go over the flow of the webinar today and what we would like to, how we'd like to interact with our audience. Number one, this webinar is being recorded, and that's always the first question people want to know, right? Is the webinar going to be available? Yes, the webinar, the full presentation is being recorded and will be available after our live broadcast. Number two, we have set aside what we hope is going to be enough time to answer questions from you, our audience. It makes for an important part of our webinar, and so we have set aside time for QA. In order to get your question answered by our panelists, though, we're going to ask that you use your GoToWebinar Control Panel question section, which is, if you, for most of you, your GoToWebinar Control Panel will be in your top right corner. If you go down to where it says questions and hit the little arrow or caret, it'll expand, and you can see that you could put your questions right in there. A couple of great reasons to do it. Number one, if you're like me, you may have a question that comes into your mind early in the webinar, but by the time the end of the webinar comes around, you forgot what your question was. Well, there's no reason for that to happen. You can type your question in real time here. It will be queued and in the webinar, in the question queue, and we will get to it as soon as possible at the appropriate time. Number two, if, as usual, we get so many questions we can't answer every single one in the time allotted today, we have a written record of the question, and we could ask our panel members to perhaps get you an answer in writing at a later date, if not live, or maybe we can post that for everyone as well. So please, use your questions section, type your questions in. We also do have a chat section down at the bottom of your control panel. For our webinars, we use chat more as if you're having some sort of technical problem. If you can, see the control panel, but for instance, audio is not working or your slides aren't advancing, we do have web engineers standing in the background, webinar engineers monitoring chat, and if you tell them your problem, they will try to help you. More often than not, they do fix whatever the problem is, and you can we'll get that going. I see we already have, looks like, questions popping in, but we will get to them at our time. That being said, we also will have a survey following the end of today's webinar, and it's just a 30-second couple question survey. But please, if you have time, take a moment, take the survey. It really helps us as we go forward, making sure the presentations are on mark and they're on a topic that you would like to see. That being said, now let's move forward a little bit. We're going to also have some polling questions I should mention as well. So it's an interactive webinar. Today's webinar, as I mentioned before, is on efficient performance test automation and optimizing the Jenkins pipeline. For me, why I'm really excited about this, because it brings together what I think are two of the most important or two of the most dynamic pieces of the DevOps marketplace today, and that is Jenkins Pipeline is, in the Jenkins 2.0, we're part of the whole CloudBees Jenkins community, and test automation. I don't think there's any topic as hot as test automation today in DevOps, and SecDevOps, in all phases of IT. We're talking, well, all phases of business, we're talking about automation, promising to revolutionize the way we do things. Nowhere is this more, I think, prevalent than what we're seeing happening in the test automation world today. And companies like BlazeMeter are frankly responsible for a lot of the momentum behind that. So, you know, marrying test automation with Jenkins Pipeline, I think it doesn't get any better, and I hope you'll agree, and I hope you'll find this an interesting conversation. I see someone already asked, will the presentation and or slides be available and recorded? So I'll say it one more time before we jump in. Yes, this is being recorded, and yes, it will be available probably within 24 hours or so of today's webinar. With that being said, let me introduce you to what I think are two great presenters for today's webinar. And like magic, it appears. So today's presenters are, first of all, from CloudBees. Happy to have Neil Hudson, Principal Solution Architect at CloudBees, and he'll be showing us some of the Jenkins Pipeline stuff today. And then joining Neil is Guy Salton. Guy is a Senior Support Engineer with BlazeMeter, and Guy's going to actually give us some demo of some new exciting BlazeMeter functionality. Gentlemen, welcome to our webinar today.